Now I think Ark Raiders is pretty flawless and beautifully designed. My last two videos on the game should tell you that much, as it's rare I give a game more than one video on this channel. However, regardless of whether people are shooting or not shooting each other currently in Ark Raiders, one thing that has interested me is to talk about longevity and health of the title, specifically around maintaining a healthy, peaceful PvE player base. In this video, I'm going to talk about two ways Embark could alter the design of two specific areas of the game in order to help maintain this health and longevity of the PvE player base without, and this is key, introducing a PvE queue. Why no PvE queue, you ask? Well, give me 60 seconds to speed run through why I don't think that's a good idea. First off, a game rarely should split the player base. Some games can afford to, others can't. Splitting the player base fragments the player experience, so there is a disparity between how players communicate and engage online, but more importantly, it will increase queue time. Secondly, this game is PvPvE. Even allowing players to play in an artificial, strictly PvE lobby goes against one of the core pillars of the game. In this instance, going against one of the core pillars, the PvPvE pillar in particular, will create an issue where players lose out on the feeling of tension and unease that would otherwise be there with the potential of PvP interactions. Even if the player doesn't feel like this is beneficial to their experience, it must be at least somewhat, otherwise they would go and play many of the other strictly PvE games that are similar to Ark Raiders and be happy doing so. The game is the game, we don't want to change what's great about it. Right, okay, so first thing I would suggest if I worked at Embark, which of course I don't, so my opinion is of course meaningless in this situation, is to alter the progressive unlocks of areas in the game. So if you don't know, the more runs you do, the more areas you unlock and can explore. The longer it takes to unlock an area, firstly, the harder that area is due to the increased Ark robot difficulty. But secondly, there is a higher concentration of higher skilled and more experienced players due to the nature of the progressive unlock system. However, as I mentioned in my last video, players can go to any area they want once they have unlocked it. This creates a problem for Embark where they lose control over the matchmaking aspect of the online experience. Sure, in the background they may have some way to measure skill level and then balance the lobby around it, again using some form of skill-based matchmaking. But regardless, players can go to any area they want, and if they go to the starting area, there is a higher concentration of low skill, inexperienced players. On top of that, as I've mentioned with the Ark robots increasing in difficulty to match the player's progression as they go through the areas, they of course don't do this if the player goes back to an earlier map. Therefore, the core reason why PvE is a thing in the first place, being the struggle against the Ark robots, is not as big of a deal to these players, which then in turn increases the likelihood that firstly, they will feel no need to team up and therefore have no reason to be peaceful, but secondly, with this information either being publicly available or easy to imply, it makes the decision of going to an earlier map more likely to be grounded in the desire to PvP. So with that reasoning stated, my suggestion for a change will be to lock earlier levels off as the player progresses through the game, most likely keeping a maximum of 4 areas open at any time. So as soon as the player unlocks a 5th map, the first one is locked off. This works well with the opt-in reset system, giving players even more reasons to reset and start fresh so they can go back to those earlier levels. Now there is a potential problem with this, of course. You could still be bad and have lots of hours in the game, and I mean, I will put my hand up right there and admit to it. However, this is probably the cleanest way to naturally and more subtly maintain a higher likelihood of a good balance between PvP and PvE. The second suggestion I have is specifically around tackling extraction campers, whilst, get this, making it more engaging for them. Extraction campers, again, as I explained in my last video, have a disproportionately larger impact on the player base of any given match than any other player in that game. This is because any player heading to one point on the map, being the extraction point, will feel like the match was a PvP match if their last encounter was with an extraction camper. If that camper lives long enough to win a few fights, they have affected, in a PvE player's view, a lot of players' games negatively. Now, my suggestion isn't something new. The game actually already does this, but it's just to alter how it's done. So when you go to extract, the schedules of Ark robots patrols increase in frequency and they become more focused and targeted. Their patrols already create a form of tension around many extraction points, not all of them, but a lot of them. So I think what would work well is, in a radius around extractions, players' positions are tracked. If they are stationary or do not move often, patrols are sent out specifically to investigate the area that they are in. The closer the time is to the extraction window closing, these patrols are increased. This is a benefit to the extraction camper, as whether or not they like the idea of it, it will objectively make it more engaging to them, as they will have to be more engaged in fighting or fleeing bots. Secondly, it will be a massive help for PvE players who do not want to fight, as if the camper is being tracked by a bot, their location is obvious and easily avoidable. unavoidable because the bot is right there above them. And it also unearths the camper from their spot more frequently, making them more easy to see and less likely for them to be scoping in on an extraction point to get an immediate shot off. Now, of course, I could say a third point, which is just to make a really sophisticated skill-based matchmaking system, but instead of it being based just on skill, it's also based on whether or not they kill players or not kill players. I mean, GTA is a great example of segmenting the player base based off their passiveness. But in terms of design and something that we can see and talk about changing, these are the two things which I wanted to mention. But yeah, there we are. This was a very fun exercise for me. This is something I do in my job as a game designer pretty much every day, looking at feedback and insights from players and seeing how games can iterate to improve the experience for those players, without necessarily giving them what they are asking for particularly. I'm sure for a subset of the vocal PvE base, a separate queue would be a dream for them. But just from my knowledge of how the game works and my perspective as a designer, and also why I think most players play this type of game, I just can't see it being a recipe for longevity, which was the goal of this video. Please let me know if you have any thoughts on this topic, whether it's about what I said or your own ideas in the comments below. Apart from Arc Raiders being truly incredible, another reason I wanted to make a third video on the game is just because of how interesting the discussions in the comment section of the last two videos have been, so thank you for that. So with that being said, thank you for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video, make sure to leave a like so others can see the video, and keep on keeping on.